We're live, Walter Johnson reporting from the Brickwall News. Today we have some insight on the women's suffrage. They are saying that the Ziegfeld Follies is a way for women to become more accurate and more available and open in musical theater. The Ziegfeld Follies are an elaborate theatrical revue production that show many things that haven't been together in a production before. Elements of vaudeville, musical theater, and extravagant spectacle. It has become one of the most iconic forms of entertainment in our era. The show has featured stunning costumes designed by some of the best costume designers. It features many stars like Fanny Brice, Eddie Cantor, Burt Williams, Josephine Baker, and Billy Burke. It has no plot, but has a series of self-contained performances and acts. The Folly Girls have now become a symbol of the jazz age, opulence, and glamour. Many of the girls launched careers from Ziegfeld, and being in the Ziegfeld Follies, they set the standard for Broadway revues. The Ziegfeld Follies are still respected and honored today with various film adaptations, some books, and the influence it had on musicals of today. Let's go into more depth about Billy Burke. Billy Burke was one of the Ziegfeld Follies. The Ziegfeld Follies were a group of beautiful girls who performed singing and dancing, as I mentioned before. It changed Broadway forever. It introduced kick lines and many more new dancing styles. Billy Burke was born in Washington, D.C. on August 7th, 1884. She grew up in Washington and later moved to London, where she attends plays in the West End. She made her debut in 1903, starring in The Schoolgirl. Some of her London shows include The Duchess of Danstick and The Blue Moon. Sooner than later, she moved to the Americas to star in the Broadway musical comedies. Billy Burke was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She was also the original Glinda and will be an icon for that role and all of the achievements she made. Another person who she portrayed was Becky Sharp, who was also culturally significant. As you can see, she was important. She was one of the first Ziegfeld Follies. Okay, this is not interesting at all. Are you sure we don't have anything better? Thank you. All right. During the time period of World War I, Showboat came out. Showboat is an important American musical. It addresses a lot of the problems that America is facing. It talks about racism, interracial marriage, and the idea of enduring love. All of these attributes made it one of the first musicals of this time that includes a story, music, and character development. The show was set on a ship called the Cotton Blossom. It travels along the Mississippi River. Our main character, Magnolia Hawks, has always had a passion for acting, but her mom strongly disagreed with what she wanted to do. During her sadness of the rejection of her parents, she meets her new love, Gaylord Ravenel. They get married and move to Chicago, but their relationship is difficult because of Gaylord Ravenel's gambling problem. They had a daughter, though, but he left the family, leaving Magnolia and their daughter, Kim. Parallel to this plot is Julie Laverne, who is a woman of mixed color that falls in love with a white man, which at this time, is against the law. After Magnolia was abandoned, she raises Kim alone and realizes she doesn't need a man to make her feel good. Why couldn't we have started with this? Showboat is so much better than the Ziegfeld Follies. This is something our viewers will be interested in learning about. This musical is one of the most influential musicals of all time. It introduced a more realistic emotional approach to storytelling. It's probably going to help pave the way for future musicals. Our last musical that we have overviewing tonight is called Bright Eyes. Not much is known about this musical, but it was said to be a lighthearted romantic comedy. It was typical of the early 20th century musical theater. It revolves around themes of mistaken identities and social satire. This musical helps set a standard for musical comedy, and it makes Broadway more lighthearted and more fun and able to enjoy. That's it for Walter Johnson, signing off, Brickwall News. And we're live. This is Clara Whitmore reporting for the Brickwall News on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, August 12th, 1934. Today we've experienced a couple of events. The Great Depression is still on the rise. It's affecting the world of Broadway. Less people are going to shows and productions are not being employed and less productions are being made. But the good news is the Treaty of Versailles was signed. This didn't have a direct impact on Broadway, but there are small things that happened, like the Roaring Twenties, that have impacted Broadway today. Floyd Ziegfeld has been a topic that we've been talking about for the past couple episodes, but he's important to Broadway because he's revolutionized musical theater with his Ziegfeld Follies. He blended spectacle, comedy, and music in helping shape the modern Broadway show. Our main topic tonight that we're going to be speaking of is Funny Face. Funny Face is a musical about a photographer for a leading magazine. She's looking for, our news reporter is looking for a fresh new face to represent the face of the campaign. Upon visiting a library, he stumbles upon Joe Stockton, who was the bookstore clerk and had very little interest in fashion in the fashion world. Even though she hated the idea of it, she agreed to being a model in Paris for this new campaign. As Dick and Joe traveled to Paris for the fashion shoot, she became a stunning and sought-out-to-be model. In the middle of all of this, Dick's relationship evolves from professional to romantic. Their relationship was tested by their differing worldviews and other influences. This musical was important because it showcased the Gershwin brothers' style, creating a new route for Broadway to take. This musical also integrated musical comedy with style and glamour. Personally, I think Funny Face is a little weird, but I definitely think it's a musical that you should go out and see. Our next musical we'll be talking about is Anything Goes. Anything Goes is a musical comedy set aboard an ocean liner that's sailing from New York to London. The story is about a nightclub singer. You can go.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'll go right back.
A nightclub singer and her friend. Her friend, Billy Crocker, leaves to pursue his love, Hope Harcourt, even though she was engaged to another man. Another musical that includes themes of mistaken identities, over-the-top antics, and silly passengers, including the lovable gangster Moonface. Martin. This musical was significant to the world of Broadway because it helped set a new standard for musical comedy, with amusing dialogue and an intense plot, but most importantly because of the unforgettable songs by Cole Porter. It helps define the golden age of Broadway, combining creative music and jolly storytelling. It's gonna help pave the way for future musical comedies. Its success shows that musicals can be both commercially appealing and artistically innovative. I hope you've enjoyed this episode on these two musicals and an update on the Great Depression. Till next time, this is the Clara Whitmore from the Brickwall News signing off. And we're live. This is Jack Brenner reporting for the Brickwall News. Today I have some insight on World War II. It's affecting Broadway because it's making more of the focus about patriotism and the war efforts. And so Broadway is drifting away from what it would normally be. The Great Depression has ended, but it's still affected the world of Broadway because people have stopped coming to shows and productions are not being employed unless productions are being made. I'd like to go into depth about George Gershwin. He is important to the world of Broadway because he helps bridge classical music with jazz and other popular styles, which transforms the sound of Broadway. He wrote music for a musical called Of Thee I Sing, which was the first musical to win the Pulitzer Prize for a drama. His musical, Porgy and Bess, premiered on Broadway with an all-black cast. Let's go into more depth about Porgy and Bess. Porgy and Bess is set in an African-American community on the Catfish Row in Charleston, South Carolina. The story's main character is Porgy, a disabled beggar who tries to protect Bess, a frightened woman trying to leave her violent, drug-addicted ex-lover, Crown, and a drug dealer, Sport and Life. Despite the struggles they had, Porgy and Bess fell in love. Their relationship was constantly threatened by poverty, addiction, and violence. A series of tragic events happened, including Crown's death and Bess's relapse. Bess leaves with Sport and Life for New York. Determined to find her, Porgy sets off alone, declaring, "I'm on my way." This musical has helped change Broadway because it shows a good sense of representation, being one of the first shows to have an all-black cast. It fuses together opera and Broadway, setting the way for multiple new shows. We'll see that later on. Our last musical we have to talk about tonight is This Is the Army. I'm performing in This Is the Army, and I will go into more depth about it. The musical This Is the Army is more of a revue than a traditional show, with more of a plot. It presents a series of acts and sketches and dances that show the American life, to symbolize patriotism and to boost morale. It begins with a tribute to World War I soldiers and then quickly transitions to World War II, where this is set in.
It gives us a sense of what life in the Army was like, with humor, sentimental moments, and pride. But it also addresses things that need to be spoken out, like duty, sacrifice, and unity. This musical is significant to the world of Broadway because it's bringing together the nation in a way that has not been brought together before. This musical so far has raised over $10 million for the Army Emergency Relief Fund. And the musical even became so popular, it's toured across the US and across the seas. I really enjoy watching this musical and performing in it, and I love learning about the history behind it. It would definitely be something I would be interested in learning more about and interested in talking about with others. That's all we have for today. This is Jack Brenner signing off for Brickwall News.
And we're live. This is Franklin Reed reporting for the Brickwall News. Today we're going to be talking about the Civil Rights Movement, the ending of World War II, and a couple of musicals. The Civil Rights Movement has been affecting Broadway by having a more diverse cast in productions and a more diverse people on and off stage. It's increased the diversity in the audience because people of color are now able to go to the theater because of the Civil Rights Movement. End of World War II has come, thank the Lord for that. This has started the golden age of musical theater. There are post-war audiences seeking escapism, and this helped Oklahoma get off of its feet and become one of the most popular musicals of this time. Now, we're going to talk about Oklahoma. Oklahoma was set in, you guessed it, Oklahoma. The story follows two young couples, but the main storyline is about Curly and Lori. The relationship they have is complicated because of someone who has always wanted Lori, named Judd Fry. As Curly and Lori navigate the feelings they have for each other, we see the secondary romance spark between Ado Annie and Will Parker. But while Ado Annie was away from her lover, she falls in love with a peddler named Ali Huggy. This musical shows many different things, including love, jealousy, the transformation of the American frontier, and a sense of community. In the end, Curly and Lori get married. I liked this musical more than any of the other ones I've seen because it shows a different side of musical theater. And I love the amount of dancing and how much fun the actors portray their characters. Oklahoma has been significant to the world of Broadway because it's the first musical with more serious themes. Oklahoma was also based off a book, and it introduced that theme to musical theater. Richard Rodgers. Richard Rodgers is somebody who is very big in musical theater. He is the one who created this masterpiece called Oklahoma. It's opened up a whole new world for musical theater. The next musical we're going to talk about is Guys and Dolls. Guys and Dolls is another story that follows two different storylines. First, we have Sky Masterson and Sarah Brown. Nathan Tedroy, someone who Sky gambles with, bets Sky can't get a proper woman to go to Havana with him. And Sky chooses Sarah, who's a missionary trying to save souls at this Save a Soul mission. Sky charms her and he ends up genuinely falling for her, which complicates the bet that was originally set in place. Parallel to this, Nathan Tedroy and Miss Adelaide, have their own problems going on. They have been engaged for 14 years, but he keeps delaying the marriage due to his illegal crap game business. Adelaide got fed up with waiting and tries to push him, but he's still trying to balance love and his risky gambling operation. Guys and Dolls was significant to the world of Broadway because it's showing a perfect integration of story and song. Guys and Dolls had an American voice, which made it significant and one of the first of this time. I didn't really enjoy this musical. I didn't pay attention very well, but the time that I was paying attention, the music was good, and it's something I would like to learn more about. Our last musical we have for tonight is called The King and I. The King and I was a Broadway musical produced in 1951, but was set in the 1860s in the Kingdom of Siam. The story follows a teacher who traveled to Siam to tutor many of the children of King Mawkut. Anna struggled to adapt to the king's authoritarian manner and clashes with traditional views, especially regarding women and slavery. However, over time, mutual respect and a complex emotional connection developed between them. The King and I helped advance the character dynamics that hadn't been set in place before. It had multiple bold cultural themes. It included groundbreaking staging and groundbreaking choreography. That's all we have for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed learning about these few musicals, and I hope you see them. This is Franklin Reed signing off for the Brickwall News. And we're live. This is Diane Travers reporting for the Brickwall News. Today we're going to be talking about a couple musicals, and we're going to be talking about the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and talking about how they impacted Broadway. So, the Civil Rights Movement has affected Broadway because there's been a more diverse cast, and there's more diversity in audiences and more diversity on and off stage. The Vietnam War has shifted people's artistic views on musical theater and centered more plots on dark heroes. We're going to talk about Stephen Sondheim a little bit. Stephen Sondheim was one of the most influential people in Broadway. His sophisticated storytelling and his unique way of performing music and writing lyrics makes him one of the most influential people of Broadway at this time. The two musicals we have in store for tonight are West Side Story and Bye Bye Birdie. 3. We have Fiddler on the Roof as well. West Side Story is a story based on Romeo and Juliet, but set in the present to help contrast the problems with race and other feuds. Set in the streets of New York City during the 1950s, it shows the story of two star-crossed lovers caught in between two rival gangs. The American Sharks and the Puerto Rican Sharks, Tony, a former Jet, meets Maria and instantly falls in love with her. But Maria's brother is Bernardo, who is a shark. Tony and Maria dream of being together, despite the cultural differences around them. A rumble was arranged, but Tony was trying to prevent it. As you can imagine, things spiral out of control, and Bernardo kills Tony's best friend, Riff. In Tony's fit of rage, he kills Bernardo. All of this drama arises, and in the process, Tony gets shot and dies. The musical ends with Maria devastated about Tony's death. The tragedy forces the Jets and the Sharks to work out their feuds, resulting in peace. West Side Story pushed the boundaries of musical theater, and it's paved a way for musicals in the future. I love this musical. This one will always be iconic, and I love quoting some of the lines from this musical on the daily. Our next musical we're going to talk about is Bye Bye Birdie. The story is set in the late 1950s and revolves around chaos that ensues when Conrad Birdie is drafted into the army. To give him a spectacular send-off, his manager, Albert Peterson, and Albert's secretary and girlfriend devise a publicity stunt. Conrad will kiss a lucky teenage fan on TV before heading off to serve in the army. The fan chosen goes by the name of Kim McAfee, a teen from Sweenapple, Ohio, who has been going steady with her boyfriend, Hugo Peabody. Kim is thrilled for the kiss at first, but all of the attention from Conrad causes tension with Hugo and leads to a series of comedic misunderstandings and conflicts among all of the characters. In the end, everything is resolved, and romance and reconciliation. Conrad goes off into the army. Kim and Hugo reunite for Albert. Kim and Hugo reunite, and Albert finally stands up to his mother and commits to Rosie. Bye Bye Birdie was the first musical to include the genre of rock and roll in musical theater. I personally wasn't too interested in Bye Bye Birdie, but I thought the music was creative and it was an important musical to musical theater. Now we're going to be talking about Fiddler on the Roof, our final musical for the night. Fiddler on the Roof. Fiddler on the Roof is a musical set in the early 1900s in the small Jewish village of Antiveka in Imperial Russia. The story follows Tivi, a poor milkman. He struggles to maintain his religious and cultural traditions while the world around him changes. Tivi is the father of 5 daughters. The plot revolves around his efforts to marry them off in a way that respects tradition. Tensions rise as the Jewish community faces growing anti-Semitism and eventual exclusion by the Russian government. Fiddler on the Roof left a legacy and influence on Broadway and impacted the world of Broadway culturally. I can't wait to see how that plays out in years to come. And that's all we have for tonight. This was Diane Travis signing off for Brickwall News. And we're live. This is Emery Covington reporting for the Brickwall News. Today we're going to be covering 6 musicals and talking about how Lin-Manuel Miranda was significant to Broadway. We're actually covering 2 of his musicals tonight, In the Heights and Hamilton. So, Lin-Manuel Miranda has been in the Broadway world since 2008 with his debut musical, In the Heights. He introduced Latin rhythms to Broadway and hip hop on the stage, and he earned 4 Tonys for this musical. He's bridged cultures and genres in a way that hasn't been seen in musical theater before. He's expanded musical theater's reach for the ways that he wants the musicals to be. Firstly, we're going to talk about In the Heights. In the Heights is In the Heights is set in the vibrant, tight-knit Latino neighborhood in Washington Heights in New York City. The story's main character is Usnavi, a bodega owner whose dreams of returning to the Dominican Republic. He lives in the neighborhood, and the friends, they chase their own dreams during a very hot summer. Some key characters we see is Nino Rosario, Benny, Vanessa, Abuela Claudia, and Usnavi, of course. Nina Rosario is a brilliant young woman who's returned from Stanford University, but she has a secret. She dropped out. Benny, he's a hardworking dispatcher at Nina's father's cab company, and he falls in love with Nina. Vanessa, Usnavi's love interest, who longs to move to downtown and become a fashion designer. And Abuela Claudia, the neighborhood matriarch who has raised Usnavi and holds the community together. The community faces rising rents and gentrification. A winning lottery ticket worth $96,000 is sold at Usnavi's bodega, raising questions about what each character would do with the money. Over the course of 3 days, dreams are tested, secrets are revealed, and the characters must decide where they truly belong and what home means to them. As I mentioned before, this show blends a sense of a hip-hop, salsa, merengue, and soul to tell a heartfelt story of identity, community, and hope. It's changed the way of Broadway forever. The next musical we're going to be talking about is Hamilton. Hamilton is another musical written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Hamilton shows that it doesn't matter the race of those who are our leaders. It shows the world shouldn't be so divided by race. I love Hamilton, and I always will. I love all the small things, like how all the actors are always on stage, and I love, love, love the musical and all of the casting. It's an important historical story that was told about an important historical figure. The music has changed Broadway forever. Hamilton, a story about our founding father. Hamilton was an immigrant who went to college at King's College. He then meets Burr, sparking the beginning of their feud. Hamilton begins to become more and more popular and eventually meets his wife. He becomes super involved in politics. He gets married, he has what seemingly is a perfect life, and is working on making the States a better place. He writes nonstop to pass his time, until his wife and kids leave on a visit to her father. While they were there, he cheats on his wife and tries to keep it a secret. While dealing with politics and stress from presidential elections, the news gets out. Now he's never able to become president. The election comes down to 2 different people he knows. He chooses one, and when the other loses, he gets very angry about it and challenges Hamilton to a duel. Hamilton will always have an impact on Broadway because of its memorability. Our next musical we're going to be covering tonight is Legally Blonde. Legally Blonde is a musical about a blonde girl named Elle Woods who is in love with a boy named Warner. One night they go out to a very fancy dinner, and she thinks he's going to propose. Instead, he breaks up with her because he thinks their paths are too different. He wants to do law school, and well, Elle's a blonde girl. In an attempt to get him back, she follows Warner to Harvard and starts to attend school there after getting in. Elle, knowing nothing about law, seems like she's stupid, but there's one person who believes in her and encourages her. Warner, on the other hand, has a new girlfriend, and Elle is heartbroken. Elle's determined to become the best lawyer at the school. She works, and she gets chosen to participate in a murder trial. Later on, she finds out that she was only picked because of her looks. The main lawyer had a crush on her. Heartbroken again, she packs up her stuff trying to leave Harvard. But that one person still believes in her. He brings her to the trial and believes in her, and she solves the case with her strategic thinking. Now she's not focused on Warner anymore, but this boy who has been encouraging her. She finishes law school and becomes one of the best lawyers they ever had. This musical had an impact on Broadway because it became an important popular storytelling musical. Personally, I really adored Legally Blonde. I've always loved the movie, and seeing a musical adaptation with a ton of different ways of contrasting the topics made me love it even more. halfway done. Now we're going to be talking about Les Mis. This musical begins with Jean Valjean spending his time doing slave work after committing a crime to save his family's life. We then see him escape where he's serving his time, and he becomes one of the wealthiest, well-known people. We're then introduced to Fantine. Fantine is a single mother who's just trying to provide for her daughter Cosette. She resorts to prostitution and eventually passes away a tragic death. Jean Valjean appears again and takes in Cosette as his own. He raises Cosette with love and makes sure she gets the life she deserves. Many years later, we see her grown up and falling in love with a man named Marius. The only problem is, Marius is a part of the French Revolution and almost dies in the revolution. That's all the information I'm going to give you now. You'll have to watch the rest later. This musical has been important to Broadway because it has changed the music and the storytelling with a more sad storyline we see in this musical. 2 more to go. Our next musical we're going to be talking about is Phantom of the Opera. Phantom of the Opera is set in a Paris opera house in the late 19th century. It tells a story of a mysterious, disfigured musical genius known as the Phantom, who lives beneath the opera house in the catacombs. Obsessed with the young and talented soprano, Christine Daae, the Phantom becomes her secret tutor, believing her voice is the key to music's greatness. When Christine is cast in a leading role, she begins to rise in fame, attracting the attention of her childhood friend and suitor, Raoul. Consumed by jealousy and love, the Phantom begins to terrorize the opera house, demanding Christine remain under the influence and threatening those who stand in his way. As the drama unfolds, Christine is torn between compassion for the Phantom and her love for Raoul. In the climactic final scenes, Christine confronts the Phantom's tragic humanity, forcing him to choose between vengeance and love. We see multiple themes of love, obsession, beauty, isolation, and redemption. This musical has been significant to Broadway because it introduced iconic songs and it introduced a new way of storytelling for Broadway. Our last musical we're going to be covering tonight is Into the Woods. Into the Woods is a musical about fairy tale characters experiencing what happens after happily ever after. In the first act, we see that the fairy tale characters want more. Cinderella wants to go to the King's Festival. Jack wants to give his cow milk again. Little Red Riding Hood wants to visit her grandmother. A baker and his wife desperately want a child. And Rapunzel is still locked away by a witch who wishes to protect her. The baker and his wife learn that they are cursed by the witch, who tells them they must find 4 magical items to lift the curse. A cow as white as milk, a cape as red as blood, hair as yellow as corn, and a slipper as pure as gold. As they search, their lives intersect with the others' characters, and by the end of Act 1, everyone's wishes seem to be granted. However, Act 2 reveals the consequences of getting what you want. A vengeful giant, the widow of the one Jack killed, wreaks havoc, and the characters must deal with loss, grief, and moral ambiguity. Several characters die, relationships fracture, and idealism fades. Ultimately, the survivors learn that no one is alone and that actions have consequences. The show ends on a bittersweet note, emphasizing the importance of community, responsibility, and stories we pass on. This musical is significant to Broadway because it's a rich, emotionally resonant piece that blends dark humor with poignant lessons, making it one of Stephen Sondheim's most beloved works. I think that's all we have for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed learning about the modern age of Broadway, and I hope you learned more. This is Emery Covington signing off for the Brickwall News.